Good evening. Welcome to In the Dark with Todd Harris Jr. I am your host, your ghost host. On tonight's episode, we will continue our exploration into the horrifying and twisted world of Edgar Allan Poe. On our last episode, we took a dark journey into some of the circumstances surrounding Poe's mysterious death, not to mention his vast influence on today's pop culture. I will be reading an excerpt from a short story, one of Poe's most macabre tales of torture and murder, The Black Cat. I will also read part of what is arguably Poe's most famous work, The Raven. So sit back, turn your lights down low, pour a glass of wine, as we will explore the realms of the unknown. There's always an element of fear whenever the dark is near. But I promise to lead you back into the light once we are finished. And now, an excerpt from the short story, The Black Cat. For the most wild, yet most homely narrative which I am about to pen, I neither expect nor solicit belief. Mad, indeed, would I be to expect it in a case where my very senses reject their own evidence. Yet, mad am I not, and very surely do I not dream. But tomorrow I die, and today I would unburden my soul. My immediate purpose is to place before the world, plainly, succinctly, and without comment, a series of mere household events. In their consequences, these events have terrified, have tortured, have destroyed me. Yet I will attempt to expound them. To me, they have presented little but horror. To many, they will seem less terrible than Baroque's. Hereafter, perhaps, some intellect may be found which will reduce my phantasm to the commonplace, some intellect more calm, more logical, and far less excitable than my own, which will perceive in the circumstances I detail with awe nothing more than an ordinary succession of very natural causes and effects. From my infancy, I was noted for the docility and humanity of my disposition. My tenderness of heart was even so conspicuous as to make me the jest of my companions. I was especially fond of animals, and was indulged by my parents with a great variety of pets. With these, I spent most of my time, and never was so happy as when feeding and caressing them. This peculiarity of character grew with my growth, and in my manhood, I derived from it one of my principal sources of pleasure. To those who have cherished an affection for a faithful and sagacious dog, I need hardly be at the trouble of explaining the nature or the intensity of the gratification thus derived. There is something in the unselfish and self-sacrificing love of a brute which goes directly to the heart of him who has had frequent occasion to test the paltry friendship and gossamer fidelity of mere man. I married early and was happy to find in my wife a disposition not uncongenial with my own. Observing my partiality for domestic pets, she lost no opportunity of procuring those of the most agreeable kind. We had birds, goldfish, a fine dog, rabbits, a small monkey, and a cat. This latter was a remarkably large and beautiful animal, entirely black and sagacious to an astonishing degree. In speaking of his intelligence, my wife, who at heart was not a little tinctured with superstition, made frequent allusion to the ancient popular notion which regarded all black cats as witches in disguise. Pluto, this was the cat's name, was my favorite pet and playmate. I alone fed him, and he attended me wherever I went about the house. It was even with difficulty that I could prevent him from following me through the streets. Our friendship lasted in this manner for several years, during which my general temperament and character, through the instrumentality of the fiend intemperance, had, I blush to confess it, experienced a radical alteration for the worse. I grew, day by day, more moody, more irritable, more regardless of the feelings of others. I suffered myself to use intemperate language to my wife. At length, I even offered her personal violence. My pets, of course, were made to feel the change in my disposition. I not only neglected, but ill-used them. For Pluto, however, I still retained sufficient regard to restrain me from maltreating him, as I made no scruple of maltreating the rabbits, the monkey, or even the dog, when by accident or through affection they came in my way. But my disease grew upon me, for what disease is like alcohol? And at length even Pluto began to experience the effects of my ill temper. One night, returning home, much intoxicated, from one of my haunts about town, I fancied that the cat avoided my presence. I seized him, when in his fright at my violence, he inflicted a slight wound upon my hand with his teeth. The fury of a demon instantly possessed me. I knew myself no longer. My original soul seemed at once to take its flight from my body, and a more than fiendish malevolence, gin-nurtured, thrilled every fiber of my frame. I took from my waistcoat pocket a penknife, opened it, grasped the poor beast by the throat, and deliberately cut one of its eyes from the socket. I blush, I burn, I shudder, while I pen the damnable atrocity. When reason returned with the morning, when I had slept off the fumes of the night's debauch, I experienced a sentiment half of horror, half of remorse, for the crime of which I had been guilty. But it was, at best, a feeble and equivocal feeling, and the soul remained untouched. I again plunged into excess, and soon drowned in wine all memory of the deed. In the meantime, the cat slowly recovered. The socket of the lost eye presented, it is true, a frightful appearance, but he no longer appeared to suffer any pain. He He went about the house as usual, but, as might be expected, fled in extreme terror at my approach. I had so much of my old heart left as to be at first grieved by this evident dislike on the part of a creature which had once so loved me. But this feeling soon gave place to irritation, and then came, as if to my final and irrevocable overthrow, the spirit of perverseness. Of this spirit, philosophy takes no account. Yet, I am not more sure that my soul lives than I am that perverseness is one of the primitive impulses of the human heart, one of the indivisible primary faculties or sentiments which give direction to the character of man. Who has not 100 times found himself committing a vile or a silly action for no other reason than because he knows he should not? Have we not a perpetual inclination in the teeth of our best judgment to violate that which is law merely because we understand it to be such? This spirit of perverseness, I say, came to my final overthrow. It was this unfathomable longing of the soul to vex itself, to offer violence to its own nature, to do wrong for the wrong's sake only, that urged me to continue and finally to consummate the injury I had inflicted upon the unoffending brute. One morning, in cool blood, I slipped a noose about its neck and hung it to the limb of a tree. Hung it with the tears streaming from my eyes and with the bitterest remorse at my heart. Hung it because I knew that it had loved me, and because I felt it had given me no reason of offense. Hung it because I knew that in doing so, I was committing a sin, a deadly sin that would so jeopardize my immortal soul as to place it, if such a thing were possible, even beyond the reach of the infinite mercy of the most merciful and most terrible God.
Fellas, give me a little bit more on the phones. Huh? Down in Memphis, they got a lot of pretty girls in the studio. That sure helps with the mood. You got me a beer? All right. Let's do it. When come flying by, it's best to run inside. I think that makes you want to die. It's best to find a place to hide. Time
Welcome back to In the Dark with Todd Harris Jr. As you just heard in my reading of Edgar Allan Poe's short story, The Black Cat, the narrator self-describes his own downfall with alcohol and subsequent mood toward the world as he begins to take out his angst and aggression on his own animals. This leads to a semi-climax where he ends up doing the most unthinkable to his own cat by tying a noose around his neck and hanging him from a tree. The reason I chose to focus on this particular area of the story instead of honing in on its ultimate conclusion was that you can plainly hear in Poe's story of a man who is falling apart, and that descent into madness is what drives so many of Poe's greatest short stories. Also, one could very well interpret this narrative as almost autobiographical in a sense, in that Poe was also a heavy drinker, and that very fact often may have clouded his better judgment. The Black Cat may not accurately depict all of Poe's life, but some of its message on philosophical inquiries like, can the conscience be avoided? Can a personality be irrevocably transformed? Can guilt be banished? Can the many caverns of the unconscious mind be regulated and contained? These are questions that really have no simple answer. The story of the Black Cat is really an exploration into the struggle between will and conscience, rather than just another scary story for a rainy evening. Now, let us board an old, rusty, midnight train car and travel to the furthest reaches, getting off at our final destination, which is the land of nevermore. Once upon a midnight dreary, while I pondered, weak and weary, over many a quaint and curious volume of forgotten lore, while I nodded, nearly napping, suddenly there came a tapping, as of someone gently rapping at my chamber door. "'Tis some visitor," I muttered, tapping at my chamber door. "Only this, and nothing more." Ah, distinctly I remember it was in the bleak December, and each separate dying ember wrought its ghost upon the floor. Eagerly I wished the morrow, vainly I had sought to borrow from my books surcease of sorrow, sorrow for the lost Lenore, for the rare and radiant maiden whom the angels named Lenore, nameless here forevermore. And the silken, sad, uncertain rustling of each purple curtain thrilled me, filled me with fantastic terrors never felt before, so that now, to still the beating of my heart, I stood repeating, "'Tis is some visitor, entreating entrance at my chamber door." Some late visitor, entreating entrance at my chamber door? This it is, and nothing more. Presently, my soul grew stronger, hesitating then no longer. Sir, said I, or Madam, truly your forgiveness I implore. But the fact is, I was napping, and so gently you came rapping, and so faintly you came tapping, tapping at my chamber door, that I scarce was sure I heard you, heard I opened wide the door. Darkness there, and nothing more. Welcome back to In the Dark. What you just heard was a small portion of Edgar Allan Poe's The Raven, written in 1845. Over the many years since the work first appeared, there have been countless books, movies, songs, and even with the poem making it into the world of sports with the name of the Baltimore Ravens, also Poe's hometown. It's interesting how The Raven, which is about a man who is longing for his lost love and is visited by a raven who speaks the one word, nevermore, has somehow found its way into so much of our pop culture in different ways. I'll leave you with a question tonight as we end our two-part series on the man who invented the modern-day horror and mystery genre. Is Nevermore an actual place? One that we can cross through many miles, and one that is not so clearly visible on any kind of map? Or is Nevermore a state of mind, a place in one's own heart, a heart which is sometimes dark, with regret of a painful loss and loneliness? It is hard to say, but what is clear is that Edgar Allan Poe's work and influence still lives on today, no matter how many centuries ago it was written. Thank you for boarding tonight's train car. We will now head back to our original destination, back into the light. You've been listening to In the Dark with Todd Harris Jr. Good night. Sleep tight. Pleasant dreams. Until we meet again.